Right. Good evening. Today we're learning Maseches Bava Basra. Where are we? Oh, we're on the bottom of Kuv Zayin and Beis. We're probably going to be stopping on the top. We're not even going to learn so much tonight. Probably the top of Kuv Tes, maybe a little bit more on Kuv Tes and Aleph, and then we'll pick up after Yom Kippur. The Gemara says in the Mishnah at the bottom of Kuv Zayin and Beis, "Ha'omer lechavero chatzi sadeh ani mocher lach." I'm selling you a half of a field. So that actually is a good question. Are we selling square footage or are we selling the value of, right? Because you can have parts of a field that are square footage is easy. That's just simple math. You just take all the square feet and you divide them in half. But if you're talking about dollars and cents, then certain parcels of land cost more money. And it may not break out into exactly half-seas. It may not work out that way. In fact, it probably won't work out that way. So what do we do in a case like this? The Gemara says, "Mishamnin beinehen v'notel chatzi sadehu." We don't yet know what mishamnin means. We'll discuss in the Gemara, but basically they're mishamnin. We're going to leave it loose for right now. V'notel chatzi sadehu, and then he takes his half of the field. And similarly, if what I sell to you, if a man says to his friend, I'm selling you the southern portion of my field, Mishamnin beinehen, here too are mishamnin. We will see soon what it means. V'notel chetzi b'darim. V'hu, and in addition to this sale, the person who is doing the selling, the mocher, is mekabel of makom hageder. He has to absorb the cost of the space where the fence will go, and the charitz and the ben charitz, and two different, very strategically placed ditches that were put outside of the wall of the property that is being sold. V'kamahu charetz shisha tvachim, uben charetz shlosha. These two different ditches that we'll soon see are meant for animal prevention. One of them was shisha tvachim, and one of them was 3 tvachim. So that's what, we don't know what it looks like quite yet, but there was an outer wall, and then a thinner ditch, and then a larger ditch. All right, let's figure out what was going on in the Gemara and the Mishnah. We had said that if I sell you half of a field, they were mishamnin beinehem. What does that mean? Amar Rav Chia bar Abba, Amar Rav Yochanan, lokech notel kachush shabo. The buyer buys the lowest quality of the field. Namely, I as the mocher can say, here's your 50%, but it's only 50% by volume, but I get to keep the nicer properties, right? I'm allowed to do that in my sale. So when I say chatzi sadeh, the chatzi sadeh is not qualifying anything in regards to dollars. It's only saying you get X amount of space. Now, the quality of that space is up to me. And here the Gemara says, lokech notel kachush shabo. That's when we say mishamnin in our Mishnah. What it meant was that, what?
What's kachush?
Kachush means the weak ones. It means it's not the good property. And the language of mishamnin is where the mocher keeps the shamein, keeps the fatty lands, he keeps the higher quality properties. It's a little bit of a difficult thing that you're saying that just the mocher gets to keep the nicer properties. It says mishamnin beinehem. It seems to be that they are mishamnin beinehem, that they are able to split the quality of the property. That's what it seems like from the language of mishamnin beinehem. So meichatesi, that only the mocher gets to keep the better land. Maybe we should do beinehem between the two of them and have them split. Oh, okay, well, there's Zibris and Edis, so each person gets half of each of the Zibris and half of the Edis fields. That would be perfect. That would be financially worthwhile. So the Gemara says, I love this. Amarle, Ada Achlis Kafnaisa beBavel. While you're sitting and eating dates in Bavel, those of us in Eretz Yisrael are destitute, and we're learning Torah mitoch hadchak. There are principles like this that we've seen throughout Shas, that learning Torah mitoch hadchak, the Kenyan is a better Kenyan. When you learn Torah mi'oni, when you're poor, when your things are hard, we live in a super affluent society. We have basically a soda machine sitting. That's not how people learn Torah in Bavel. It's not how people learn Torah anywhere in our history. All of the greats were Kona. You learn better. You learn better. It's not me saying that. I am a glutton. I ate 7 Stelladoras in Jewel today while I was shopping. Well worth it. But I'll never be the Talmud Chacham that they were. We live in the lap of luxury. It's very difficult for us to learn mitoch hadchak. You have to really not just live a kola lifestyle, but the meager version of a kola lifestyle, which was already meager.
Are you trying to afflict yourself before Yom Kippur? Stella Doras.
Oh, those are so good.
Maybe the ones with fudge.
The Strimel cookies. Yeah, the Strimel cookies.
Oh,
Fantastic. It's a woman behind me and Joel. She's like, by the way, your package is open. I'm like, I know. It's actually kind of a funny dialogue. She was like trying to like protect me, like somebody opened your package. I'm like, it was me. And I ate like a kibetza of cookies walking through the store, like a behemoth gossip. So that's what he says. While you're sitting there in Bavel munching on some dates, I actually finished learning in the base medrash. Targimna miseifa. I was able to answer this question from the Seifa, the Ktani Seifa. Chetzi b'daram ani mocher lach v'shamninan beinein v'notel chetzi b'daram. Says the Gemara, your question, Reb Chia, why don't we say mishamnin beinein means that they both have to give? Doesn't make any sense because in the Seifa of our Mishnah, we said that if I'm selling you the southern half of my field, we're still mishamnin. V'amai mishamnin beinein v'chetzi b'daram amarle. This wasn't a loose, I'm selling you half of a field. I told you which half we're giving you. I told you it's the southern half. So it doesn't mean southern half. It means Masham then Beineim, that he still gets to pick. Within the southern field, he gets to pick the better and worse fields and give them away. Ella, the demand the southern half, he has to give the value of what would be what the person is paying for. That's what the Gemara says. So that's what Mishamnan Benin in our Mishnah means. Just to review, Mishamnan Benin in our Mishnah means that the mocher, even though he agreed to sell half of a field, he only has to give the equivalent of the dollars of half of that field in any iteration that he so chooses. But he's Mishamnan, he keeps the shaman, he keeps the better field and gives the worse field to the person that he's selling to. The Gemara says 2 lines from the bottom of Kuf Zayin Amud Beis. Mikabel alav makom geder, says the Gemara that when a mocher sells his chatzi field, or chatzi sadeh, that he has to absorb the cost of the wall that's going to be built around that field. And the Gemara says Tana, we have a brisa, charitz mi bachutz uben charitz mi bifnim, v'zeh v'zeh achore hageder. Says the Gemara, our Mishnah had mentioned a charitz, a larger charitz, which was on the outside, and then a ben charitz, which was on the inside. But so fascinating layout. So we have a wall, a small ditch, and a large ditch. So the wall, this is inside, and this is all outside. So outside the wall, there was a double ditch, a thin one, and then a larger one. So again, from out to in, it's a larger ditch, a smaller ditch, and then the wall itself. So the Gemara says, why did we do this? Because we don't want animals to jump into your field over the wall. So they built kind of the equivalent of a non-water moat outside of the field. They kind of dug a double ditch. They dug a 6 further away from the fence, and then they dug a 3 closer to the fence. We'll soon see that what separated was simply 1 tefach of space. So you have a wall, you have a 3 tefach ditch, you have a tefach of land, and then a 6 tefach ditch. This was animal prevention from getting into the field. Animals couldn't attack it. I don't know. Maybe some animals can jump better than others. Says the Gemara, why don't we just have the 6? Just have the larger charetz and forget about the smaller charetz. Says the Gemara, I did the ravach haima begave v'kafza. Since there's enough space in the 6 for him to get a good jump, even from the bottom, and because there's nothing else between the 6 and the wall, he's very close to the wall. So 6 tvachim is about 2 feet. Okay, sure, he's going to be able to do that. So instead, what they did is they put the ben charetz in between the charetz and the wall. So the charetz is larger. He can't make the jump from there. And then he put a smaller one next to, in between the large charetz and the wall. And then he won't have any way to jump. Even on the 1 tefach in the middle, that's not enough to get a good grip. We don't know what kind of animal we're talking about, but that was how they navigated animal control back in the day. Says the Gemara, fine. If what you're saying is that what makes all of this work is the smaller charetz, then just do a smaller charetz because it's difficult for him to jump. Says the Gemara, I did the cotton since the charetz itself, the ben The ben charetz is very small. Kaima asvase v'kafza. And says the Gemara that we're afraid that in that case he may jump in because that's not enough of a deterrent. The kama ben charetz, the ben charetz tefach. So basically, to review, the system that they had in place is that if you had an outer wall like this, my hands are the outer wall. So on the outside of the outer wall was a short 3 tefach gap, a little ditch, a 1 tefach wall, and then a 6 tefach space, and that was enough to prevent animals from breaking in. That's what our Gemara says. Hadron alach beiskur baruch Hashem. We finished the 7th parak of Maseches Bava Basra. Yiratzon should come back to this daf in 7.5 years. Amen. Says the next Mishnah, the next parak. This parak is called Yesh Nochlin, and Yesh Nochlin is about inheritances. Now, we know the classical case that if a father has money and then the father passes away, that his son or any of his next of kin would get that Yerusha. In English, the word that they would use is he would bequeath his Yerusha to his child. So it's like a progeny kind of word. Bequeath is not a common word.
It's more common than
Very good. Bequeath?
Yeah.
Nah.
Bequeath means that he requested it be. Right. The inheritance would be, if he didn't bequeath it, then there'd be.
The father bequeathed it, meaning it's automatic by the Torah is what you're saying, right? Even if he did nothing, it would be given to next of kin. In Torah law, in secular law, what happens? Next of kin. Okay. So the Gemara, the Mishnah here at the open of the parak, paints a picture of 4 iterations of relationships. Yesh nochlin umanchilin. There are 2 people who, when person A dies, person B inherits, and if person B dies first, then person A inherits. They have a very similar symbiotic inheritance relationship. Of course, only one person can die first. But the point is that the nature of the relationship is such that whichever one dies first, they're nochlin and manchilin. What does this mean? We'll see in the Mishnah what the cases are in a minute. V'yesh nochlin v'lo manchilin. There are cases where a person would be nochel, where a person would give a Yerusha. Where a person will receive a Yerusha, v'lo manchilin, but they couldn't give it back to that person. So we're talking about different relationship types. This will crystallize in a moment when the Mishnah details what the 4 cases are. There's also manchilin v'lo nochlin. There are people who are manchil, they can give a Yerusha, but they can't receive. Obviously, that should be true because it's the inverse of the previous case of yesh nochlin v'lo manchilin. And lo nochlin v'lo manchilin. There are cases where 2 people have a relationship where their relationship is too distant and they would never inherit to one another. Ve'elu nochlin umanchilin. What are examples of people who have a relationship where no matter who dies first, the Yerusha will go from one person to the next? Ha'av es habanim v'habanim es ha'av. So a father will, with his passing, bequeath his inheritance to his son, and a son as well, if he has no other next of kin. We're going to be discussing tomorrow this relationship, father-son. Let's say the father has a brother and the father has a son, and the father dies. Who gets that money? We'll be discussing all of these details, and as well. Does
the person have the right to change that?
No, it's a pecking order. It's based on psukim. I can't imagine you have a pasuk in Chumash of Pi Shnayim.
There's a way to.
You have to gift it a moment before death.
Right,
Death,
but
Torah takes over.
yeah, but that's a loophole. He's asking be'etzem, can I recode? But
The Torah tells you.
right, but the Torah mandates, and we'll see based on psukim already today. We'll see that there are just the parent-child relationship is so strong that there's no other next of kin that really compares. So you want to give it to your brother instead of your child, like that. You're breaking chumash. The pasuk says Pi Shnayim. You know
Well, with the daughters, isn't there? I thought there's like a.
That's if there are no sons, then the daughters
Even
can.
if you have sons, like practically speaking, if you have
Tina
sons and daughters,
Shemidina,
there's a method
Tina,
to.
Right, you gift it before death, so that when you die, the Torah would bequeath, but there's no money left because it was all given away a minute ago.
Right. Okay. So that's what?
We're gonna say bequeath a lot.
A lot. I'm very excited about it. I like saying words that sound smart.
gets two,
What?
but Howard gets two shares. So you're not gonna, whatever you think you do.
My father has so much money, it doesn't matter.
Good thing.
Billions.
Billions, billions of pennies. By the way, billions of pennies is not so bad. I'm just, it's true. How do you know that? That's a bad question.
Yeah.
Sounds like too much, no? A billion, you dropped two, no? Billion, million, 100,000, yeah.
So billion, 100 million, 10 million.
Do you get mice on inheritance stuff?
I don't know.
Give me a billion
I don't
pounds,
think
I'll
so.
go right.
Yeah.
Well, let's discuss less morbid things, okay? So then the Gemara says that's father-son relationship. V'ha'achen min ha'av, brothers who are sons of the father. If they are brothers from another mother, then they are not in this category. This is only brothers. So two brothers of a father, they are also nochlenu manchila. These are the two examples. The next case, the Mishnah says, ha'ish es imo, v'ha'ish es ishto, a man to his mother and a man to his wife, ubnei achayos, and his nephews through his sister, they're nochelin v'lo manchilin. So they could be the next of kin of a man at some point down the pecking order, but they're lo manchilin. Those other people, the recipients, wouldn't ever have bequeathed to the man. Ha'isha es baneha v'ha'isha es baila, a woman and her sons, a woman and her husband, ve'achei ha'em manchilin v'lo nochlin. This is literally the inverse of the previous sentence. We're going to discuss this in the Gemara as to why that happened. Ve'achin min ha'em, when you have brothers who are only related through the mother, the fathers are different, second marriage, and the mother remarried, lo nochlin v'lo manchilin. Those two brothers who have a relationship only through a mother, there's no Yerusha link between those two people. So a woman gets married, and she's, let's say Reuven is married to Rachel, and they have a son, Shimon. And then they get divorced, and Rachel marries Yaakov, and they have Chaim. So the two sons have no halachic relationship as it relates to Yerusha. They're related to each other. Had they been a male and a female, they couldn't marry each other. There would be restrictions between them. They have halachic tether to one another. But as it relates to Yerusha, they're lo nochlin v'lo manchilin. Potentially, yeah. From the kid. You're saying, from who?
Well, the wife gets married a second time, she has some kind of money she got from the divorce. And then she passes away. Is her second husband entitled to that money?
I mean, why would it not be Yerusha? Right.
If he didn't have to.
Yeah, does he jump over?
He is in the pecking order. Husband number two is in wherever he falls. He's in the pecking order. And we're going to spend a lot of time in this parak sharpening the pecking order and those kinds of things, especially over the next couple of days. Okay, bottom of Kuf Ches Amud Aleph. Ma'ishna diktani ha'av es habanim beresha. Why does it say first that the father should be Yoresh the son? That is not the nature of things. That's not the way the world turns. Listening habanim es ha'av beresha. That's the way the world turns. That's normal. The father should live till 120, but they should live that long, and then they pass away before their child. That makes a lot more sense. Why are you starting out so sharply? Chada, after all, first of all, we should never be starting to speak so negatively, where the son dies first. Why would we do that? And second, the ode kidichsi, because we have a pasuk in Chumash, ish ki yamus uben einlo. So here the Rashbam explains what's going on here. The Rashbam on the top of the page, Dibra Maschil V'od, says, Hayeshlo ben beno yorsho. If he would have had a son, then the son would have been Yoreshim. V'chihechi de parshas nachalos pascha b'yerushas haben la'aviv kachai lo l'tana liftoch. The same thing should have happened in our Mishnah as happened in the pasuk. That just like in the parsha of Nachalos, we started talking about a ben being Yoresh, the father. That's what our Mishnah should have done. So first, Al Tzpuranusa, and second, using the Torah as precedent, why is it that we started out by talking about the son dying and the father being Yoresh the son first? That just doesn't roll off the tongue nicely. Why would you talk about that case first? So the Gemara says on the top of Kuf Chesim Beis V'Tana, Aidi de Asyale Midrasha Chavivale. This we've seen before in Shas a number of times, that because the halacha about a father and a son was darshaned from a drasha as opposed to an explicit pasuk, it's chaviv alei. It's more precious. Umay drasha, what was the drasha? The Tanya. The pasuk says she'ero. So you should just know it's not the she'ero that was happening in my head. I was thinking about Emor with the Kohanim. That's not at all. It's actually she'ero over there. Anyways, I was wrong on a bunch of fronts. So on the side here, the pasuk's from Bamidbar. The pasuk says v'im ein achim. This pasuk is very helpful because it actually does some of the delineations of our pecking order of next of kin. V'im ein achim le'aviv unesatem es nachal asoli she'ero, to his relative hakarov elav, who's close to him in mishpachto. And then it gives the inheritance to him. So what does she'ero mean? The Tanya, the Brisa says she'ero zeha'av. That is a child who will be yoresh to his father. Melamed sha'av kodem le'achin. That means if a father dies, the pecking order when the father dies is that first his son gets Yerusha dollars, and if there is no son, then the father's brothers would get the Yerusha dollars. So let's talk about Reuven. Reuven has a brother Shimon, and Reuven has a child Chaim. So Reuven dies. So if Chaim's alive, Chaim gets the Yerusha. If there is no Chaim, if he never had kids, then Reuven's brother Shimon gets the Yerusha. That's learned from this pasuk of she'ero melamed sha'av kodem la'achin yachol yehei kodem leben. Maybe we would have thought not that way. Talmud lomar hakarov kodem, the one that's closer. And what we assume, and we could be done as to whether or not we feel that this is the case. If you ask me, who am I closer to, my brother or my son, I would tell you different things. I would tell you, well, my brother I've been with for the far majority of my life. My son I've only been with for the last many years, whatever, but I didn't have a child until I was an adult. So if you're looking at it from a time perspective, I've known my brother longer, but halacha doesn't look at it that way. The fact that a person brought a child into the world, there's a kurva there, there's a closeness, and I think we get that. There's a strong sense there, and therefore hakarov kodim. Says the Gemara, Umar rois the rabos es haben ulahotzi es ha'ach. Why did you do that? Why did you say that hakarov, that the close one is the son? You could have learned that close was the other one. Again, how do you know that? When any of my children were born, I knew my siblings way better than I knew that child. That child was a clueless lump of cells. We had no idea what the kid was going to be, what they were going to be like. I had no idea. My relationship with my brothers and sister are much longer, says the Gemara. So ma rois the Rabo says why is it that if there is in fact a son that he gets the Yerusha over the brother? So says the Gemara, all in a brisa, mar be'anias haben sheken kam tachas aviv leya'ada u'lesteachuza. Because a child, I was thinking in my talking out loud, like, who do I know better? No. The Gemara comes at it from a purely halachic lens. In regards to Ya'ada, that is, we're not going to discuss this at length, but there's a lot of Rishonim here that discuss the din of Ya'ada, that if a father were to purchase a maidservant when she was a child, then that father's son could marry that maidservant. That's part of the din of Ya'ada. We've learned about this before. And as well as Ste'achuza, that the son is able to take over a Ste'achuza. Says the Gemara, well, though you're right, those are two check boxes that are unique to a son that don't apply to a brother. But there is one thing that applies to a brother that doesn't apply to anybody else. Yibum. That's a really good argument. The Gemara says, Adirabba, mar be'ani es ha'ach. If I have a brother and I don't have children, and that, well, I'm going to not use me as the example, but let's say there's a man, right, the person's going to die. It's not a good story. So you have Reuven and Shimon, and Reuven dies, and Reuven's married with no kids. So then Shimon has to do Yibum. So there was no son. So clearly there's a preference of the brother. So Mar be'ani esa'ach shekain kam tachas echav liyibum. Says the Gemara, terrible argument. It's actually working exactly in the opposite of what you would think, because when does a brother have an opportunity to do Yibum? Only under one circumstance. When there's no kids. So that means that the lack of kids was the only reason that the brother was zocha to get the yibum. Zocha is not even the right word. Klum yesh yibum elav makom she'ein ben. Makom sheyesh ben ein yibum. So now we have nothing going for the brother. The brother has no skin in the game at all. So therefore, for sure, the ben is going to be ahead of the brother. Says the Gemara, well, taima de ika hai pircha. The reason why you're saying that is because you are asking this question. The reason you're saying that the son has preference over the brother, if a man dies, that his son should get the Yerusha instead of his brother, the reason you're saying that is because we weren't able to establish this argument of Yibum, because we had said that Yibum is only when there isn't a son, that a son is more powerful than a brother. Without that argument, then Hava Amina Ach Adif. Without that argument, I have another reason to say that a brother is not shaykh to this. We're only going to learn a few more lines and then we'll pause and we'll pick up again after Yontif. Says the Gemara, Tepukle, I could learn even without the Yibum argument that the brother is not the one who is the preferred one. Dehacha tarte dehacha chada. Because even if you allow the Yibum argument to stay in place, but still, when you put things on the justice scale, the son has two things in his favor, and the brother only has one. The son has ya'ada and ste'achuza, like we said on the previous amud, and the brother only has one. The brother only has yibum. So Mimanavshach, even if you want to accept the argument of yibum, it doesn't matter. The brother's lost many times over. So says the Gemara, you can't say that, because on the top line of Kuf Testament Aleph, ste'achuza gufa mehai taimahu dekakaima leilatana. Ste'achuza itself is something that is connected to the same rationale that we just used for yibum. How so? Klum yesh yibum ela b'makom she'ein ben. A yesh ben ein yibum. So over here, what we're saying is that the argument that the ben is stronger is because the ach only marries the avama if there's no son, and we have a similar application of the halachos of ste'achuza, which would make it a one-to-one thing. If we take away ste'achuza, so then it's only ya'ada on the son's side and yibum on the brother's side. So that's why we don't do that. And we have to employ the rationale that we said at the bottom of Kuf Chesamud Beis, that really the brother has no feet to stand on. He doesn't have yibum either. So that way, instead of it being 1-to-1, it's 1-to-0. The son wins yet again. And again, we're going to try and figure these things out as we move along. But right now, as it stands, if a father has a son and a brother, and the father dies, his Yerusha, first and foremost, pecking order goes to the son and not to his brother. We'll stop right here. And on Sunday night, Emir Hashem, we'll pick up 4 lines down on Kuf Tes Amud Aleph. Wishing you all a Gemar Chasima Tov.